Dad secretly got married and moved them into my house with his wife and two daughters. Now they think they owned the place. I'm 25, female, living in a big old house I inherited from my mom after she passed away when I was just 16. It's not just any house, it's an ancestral place, filled with memories and stuff from generations of my family. So my dad, who's 52, went on this trip with his buddies a few months back and came home with a bombshell. He got married to his high school sweetheart, Steph, who's 51. They'd been secretly in touch for nearly 2 years. I was totally out of the loop. Didn't even know he was dating. The next thing I know, Steph and my new twin stepsisters, Lizzie and Lexi, let's just call them that, moved in. Oh, and let's not forget their two chihuahuas, Gucci and Hermes. Yep, those are their actual names. The twins are 20, attending a state college nearby, and figured they'd save some bucks living here instead of on campus or renting somewhere else. The house is definitely big enough, 7 bedrooms, over 8 bathrooms, a basement, and a yard with a pool. But it's been one issue after another since they moved in. First up, the great room shuffle. Steph decided she needed more closet space for her luxury bags and whatnot, and guess whose room has the second biggest closet? Yep, mine. She actually suggested I should move to a smaller room. I put my foot down on that one. Told her straight up. This has been my room forever, and there's no way I'm moving out of it in my own house. My dad tried to smooth things over by offering to split my closet space between Steph and his stuff in another room. Compromise, I guess? Next, we've got the twins' total lack of boundaries. Since I'm working from home because of COVID, my home office is sacred space. Well, Lexi didn't get the memo. She barged into my office wearing a bikini while I was in a business meeting, camera on and everything, walked right behind me, totally oblivious to the professional disaster she was causing. Talk about embarrassing. Then there's the issue with their dogs. Gucci and Hermes are not house-trained, at all. They leave little surprises all over the place. And the twins don't bother cleaning up after them. And these dogs aren't just messy, they're mean, especially to my Cocker Spaniel, Moxie. She ended up with a scratch on her arm from one of their nips. Not cool. And the icing on this chaotic cake? They decided it was a good idea to move all the family photos, pictures of my grandparents, great-grandparents, my mom, and even my baby pictures, up to the attic without asking me. Just took down all these memories and stashed them away like they meant nothing. I spent a whole day putting everything back where it belongs, only for it to happen again a few days later. Then 2 days ago, Steph did it again. But this time she replaced them with her pictures, the twins and her family, etc. Steph and I had a heated argument about it. I told her that she can't do anything regarding the decorations, etc. in my house without my approval, and that her daughters should also learn how to knock on doors and have their dogs potty trained. She said that they can do whatever they want in her house, and that she will be making up house rules that we will all follow. Since she thinks I'm such a wild animal, doing whatever I want, and that I was not raised properly due to having a bad, useless mother to say I was livid was an understatement. I told her that she can pack her things along with her twins because I'm kicking around. She said that I have no right to kick them out from her house. I told her, and I quote, "Lady, you are living under my roof. This is my house. I inherited it from my mother. And right now you, your twins, and your dogs are trespassing. Get out before I call the cops." My dad got home early that day after Steph told him what happened. I told him my side of the story. I said that they're still getting used to the house. That moved here was difficult for them. I told him about all the issues surrounding them, but he kept insisting that it's going to get better and that to just give them some time. I told him that I've put up with all their crap, but have had enough. Enough is enough. He was defending them more and taking their side. So I told him that he can either move out with them or stay, and that he has until the end of the week. Did I do the right thing here? Making my dad choose between me and his new family? I literally gave them a chance. And I've put up with so much of their awfulness for the past few months, which is sad about my mother was my breaking point. There's no way that she will disrespect her house where she grew up and where I grew up in. Now for the top comments before reading the updates. Definitely is good for you. Literally my first thought, nodding like yes, good. They sound terrible. Girl, you did what you had to do and I would do the exact same thing. Your father, on the other hand, need to grow some spine. It seems like she got him wrapped around her fingers. I doubt it was even his idea to get married without inviting you. If he ends up choosing them, just cut them out. Go. No contact. You don't need that kind of toxicity in your life. Also, make sure that he can't contest her inheritance regarding the house just so they can stay there. You know, people these days hope it turns up in your favor. Don't put the secrets. Wedding on to wife. Daddy Dearest dated for 2 years, hiding it so hard that Obiano clue whatsoever. Even if this was her idea, Daddy Dearest was totally in support of it. Yes, this amount of entitlement your father's wife and stepdaughters is absurd. I am so glad you kicked them out. As far as her dad, his behavior is also pretty terrible. The whole thing were groups. I got married, didn't tell you. And oh, by the way, in my new family, move in. He is not showing any courtesy or respect and honesty. I would be surprised if the wedding was the stepmom's idea, especially not inviting the daughter of the man you're marrying. Like, what is that? Update 1. Hey everyone, thanks so much for all the comments and support. It really helps, especially during all this craziness. Sometimes I worry I come off as a pushover because I really hate confrontation. Arguing or fighting just isn't my thing. I'd rather keep the peace, you know? So, a little update on what's been going down. Some of you suggested changing the locks around the house, which sounds like a solid idea. There's also this old rusted gate at the property that's been hanging open forever, and I haven't gotten around to fixing it yet. Maybe it's time to look into that too. I actually called up the lawyer who handled my mom's will to see if there's any loophole or chance that my dad might try to contest it. We've got a meeting in a couple of hours, so fingers crossed that goes well. About my dad, look, he's a good guy. He worked hard to provide for me after my mom passed away. He's never dipped into my funds or asked for financial help for living expenses. He's an engineer, makes a good six-figure salary, so I don't really think he's after my money. But I guess he's just caught up in the fact that someone from his past still finds him attractive at his age. We had a chat about his sudden wedding and why he kept his relationship secret. He told me he wasn't sure how I'd react to him dating his high school sweetheart. To be honest, I was pretty upset at first, especially since I wasn't even invited to the wedding, but I'm trying to get over it since he seems happy. But as for his wife and what her deal is, whether there's any bad blood from the past with my mom or something else that's making her act this way, I don't really know, and I'm not sure I want to dive into that mess. They're adults. They can handle their own issues, and if they ever run into money trouble, they've got their collection of luxury bags to sell off. Seriously, who needs so many bags that they require a whole closet just to store them? In terms of family, it's pretty much just me and my dad around here. My mom was an only child, and she inherited everything from my grandparents. When she passed, most of it came to me, though she left some for my dad as well. My dad's side of the family, like my grandparents and my uncles and aunts, they all live about 6 hours away. So day to day, it's just us. Oh, and Moxie, my Cocker Spaniel, is doing great. She's loving the quiet around the house lately and seems really happy. I'll keep you all posted as things develop. Again, thanks so much for the support. It means a lot to know I'm not going through this alone. Update 2. I had a sit down with Amy, that's not her real name, the lawyer who managed my mom's will this past Saturday. I wanted to clear up any confusion about the will and see if my dad could potentially challenge it. Amy showed me a couple of crucial documents that both my dad and I had signed previously. These documents were basically our agreement acknowledging what was left to each of us and a promise not to contest the will at any point in the future. Amy also advised that, to keep things on the level and avoid any unnecessary legal headaches, it would be wise to give them a 30-day notice to find a new place and move out. With this new information, I felt more secure about where I stood legally, which was a relief. But of course, the drama didn't just stop there. What was supposed to be a quiet dinner between my dad and me ended up being anything but. Instead of the private chat I had envisioned, Steph and the twins decided it was the perfect time to join us, turning the whole evening into a much bigger affair than planned. During dinner, I decided to lay everything out on the table. I explained that I had spoken to Amy and brought up the details about the house and other related legal matters. I mentioned that they had 30 days to sort themselves out and find another place to live. Steph immediately tried to jump in and object. She seemed ready to argue her point, thinking maybe she could persuade me to change my mind. I wasn't in the mood to drag this out any longer than necessary, so I cut that short. I told her plainly that some issues can't be fixed just by talking or going to family therapy, and that sometimes space is what's needed to sort things out. She suggested that maybe we just needed more time to get to know each other. But honestly, from everything that's happened since they moved in, it's clear they only act like family when they need something from me. I've had enough of the passive-aggressive maneuvers and the manipulative tactics, so I straight up asked my dad what his plans were. Was he going to move out with them, or did he want to stay? He seemed taken aback and asked if I was kicking him out. I clarified that I wasn't kicking him out. He was free to stay if he wanted, but that I wouldn't be maintaining contact if he chose to leave with Steph and the twins. Steph then chimed in, playing the victim, asking why I was kicking them out of their house. I had to explain, again, that this house was mine, inherited from my mom. It seemed to surprise her. Maybe she had convinced herself that we were living in a house that belonged to my dad. Lexi brought up another issue. She complained about the timing of the move, pointing out that they were in the middle of finishing up their spring semester and that finals were just weeks away. I sympathized, but remained firm. I responded with a slight smile. Well, you better start looking for a place soon then. Yesterday, Easter Sunday, I decided to throw a little get-together at my place. I invited my boyfriend and his family, along with my two best friends, to come over and celebrate the day. My dad has been trying to get in touch, asking me to spend the day with him instead. But honestly, the only family I feel like I have right now are my friends and my boyfriend's family. We had a really good time, did an egg hunt, played some fun games, and had a big dinner, which felt super cozy and was something I hadn't enjoyed in a long time. Now, on to the house stuff. I've been busy documenting everything in the house that's worth over $500. I had some friends come over to help with that, making sure we got everything listed just right. I've changed all the locks on the doors, and the only other person who has a copy of the key is my boyfriend. I know my dad doesn't really approve of him because he's from a middle-class background, but that's his problem, not mine. I also went ahead and had a professional come in to install a full security system around the house and property. It feels good to have that extra layer of safety. Plus, I've got an appointment set up to talk to someone about getting the fences and gate fixed up and more secure. I haven't really touched the fund my mom left for me since I started college. It was meant to help with tuition, dorm fees, and other expenses. But given the current situation, I felt it was necessary to dip into it. All the important family pictures and portraits are now safely stored away, and I've put all the smaller valuables in a safety deposit box. I also made sure all critical documents are secured in a water and fireproof safe that needs both a key and a passcode to open, which I'm keeping in my room. I'm really trying to take all the precautions and follow the advice you guys have been giving me in the comments on my previous posts. Thank you so much for all the help. It means a lot, especially now. As for my dad, I'm not sure why he's choosing to stick with his new wife and her family over his own daughter. It hurts, not gonna lie, because he's really the only family I have left around here. I'm not close with his side of the family, so once he and his new family move out, I plan on cutting contact. He's made his choice, and he can live with it. That's pretty much it for now. I'll keep you all posted if anything new happens, or if there's more drama, which, let's be honest, there probably will be. But I've reached a point where I'm just accepting that, for whatever reason, they matter more to him than I do. Thanks again for all the support and kind words. It really helps to know I'm not alone in this. Update 3. Hello again, everyone. 2 days ago, I found myself alone in the house, rummaging through the attic among boxes that smelled of must and memories. I was distractedly sorting through some of my mom's old belongings, a task that was equal parts therapeutic and heartbreaking. Amidst a stack of her things, I stumbled upon her old writing desk that I hadn't thought to explore before. It was one of those antique, heavy oak desks with a myriad of compartments and drawers. As I was fiddling with a stuck drawer, I discovered it had a false bottom. Inside, hidden away, was a collection of letters tied with a faded ribbon. The top envelope was addressed in a familiar handwriting. Not my mom's, but I couldn't place whose. Curiosity piqued, I sat down amidst the dust and pulled out the letters. They were addressed to my mom, signed with just an S. Initially, I was just puzzled. No one I knew, including my mom, had a name starting with S. But as I started reading, the context of these letters slowly painted a stark and troubling picture. These weren't just friendly letters. They were intimate, filled with confessions and apologies. The tone of betrayal was palpable. The more I read, the more the reality began to sink in, and the name Steph started to make a horrific kind of sense. The letters spanned years, detailing a close friendship turned sour. The most recent ones, especially, were heavy with guilt and remorse. Steph had written about an incident from their past that had deeply hurt my mom, something she was desperate to apologize for but never got the chance. The last letter was dated just a week before my mom's sudden death, a letter that pleaded for forgiveness for a betrayal that wasn't specified but was clearly significant. My heart was pounding as the implications settled in. With this new, unsettling information, I was a storm of emotion waiting for my dad to come home. When he finally did, I confronted him with the letters. The look on his face when he saw them in my hands, it was like watching someone watch their whole world crumble. He didn't even try to deny it. Everything came pouring out. He admitted that Steph was indeed the S from the letters. They had an affair years ago, during his marriage to my mom. After Mom passed, he and Steph eventually reconnected and rekindled their relationship, culminating in their recent marriage. A fact he chose to keep hidden from me out of fear. But that wasn't all. Steph, overhearing our confrontation, decided it was time to reveal her part of this twisted story. With nowhere else to turn due to financial ruin, a lifestyle maintained on borrowed money and time, she admitted that moving in was as much about survival as it was about seeking forgiveness. All the luxury and facade of wealth was just that, a facade. Her finances were a disaster, her assets seized, her life a series of mounting debts. And the twins? They were just as shocked as I was, having been brought into this house under the pretense of family unity. They felt used, caught between their mother's schemes and a new family dynamic they hadn't signed up for. So where does this leave me? My home, the place of my childhood and my only real connection to my mom, had become a stage for deceit and long-buried secrets. The betrayal felt as fresh as if it had happened yesterday. The anger and sadness were overwhelming. I told them all, Dad, Steph, and even the twins, who I genuinely feel for, that they needed to find somewhere else to live. The end of the month was their deadline. The house feels different now, emptier somehow, even with them still here. I've been spending a lot of time alone, trying to make sense of everything. The betrayal by Steph, the deceit by my dad, it's all too much to process. I'm left wondering about forgiveness, about whether it's even possible, or if it's just another concession in a long line of them. How do you forgive the unforgivable? How do you reconcile the father you loved with the man who betrayed not just your mother, but you? As for Steph, every time I see her, it's a reminder of everything that's happened. The lies seem to hang in the air around her, and I struggle with the desire to understand her motives against the sheer impact of her actions. Thank you all for being there, for offering words of support and advice through what feels like the darkest chapter of my life. I've been reading every comment, every suggestion, and it helps, it really does. To know I'm not alone in this, to have a community that stands by me when my own family seems to have fallen apart. So, what's next? I honestly don't know. I need to figure out what forgiveness looks like, if it's even a possibility, and how to move forward from this. Any thoughts or advice would be greatly appreciated. How would you handle this? What would you do if you were in my shoes? Looking forward to hearing your thoughts. And again, thanks for sticking with me through all this. Your support means the world right now. Update 4. Hey everyone, things have escalated and not in a good way, so brace yourselves for a bit of a long read. Since I last posted, tensions in the house reached a boiling point. It seemed like things might move towards a resolution with Dad, Steph, and the twins packing up to leave. However, the semblance of peace was short-lived, and what I walked into last Thursday was straight-up chaos. I'd taken a long walk to try and clear my head, something I find myself needing more and more these days. But as I approached the house, I noticed a moving truck parked out front, which wasn't out of the ordinary given the circumstances. Except it was. I walked into the house to find Steph directing movers, as they were handling not just their belongings, but some of my most treasured family heirlooms, items that had belonged to my grandparents and were never meant to leave this house. I immediately confronted Steph, and her response was like a slap in the face. She claimed they were entitled to take part of the furnishings as compensation for having to relocate. I couldn't believe the audacity. My dad, trying to play peacemaker, chimed in with some nonsense about wanting to keep some items to make their new place feel more like home. It was surreal, watching them claim pieces of my history and my heritage as if they were picking out items from a catalog. Things got heated really fast. I argued that they had no right to take anything that was mine, especially things that held such sentimental value. The twins then joined in, hurling accusations and insults, painting me as the villain in their twisted narrative. It felt like I was in some bizarre alternate reality, where up was down and right was wrong. The movers were caught in the middle, unsure of whose orders to follow. I stood my ground, demanding they unload the truck and put everything back where it belonged. Steph was furious, her face red and her words sharp, threatening legal action and claiming they would get their due one way or another. The commotion attracted the attention of several neighbors, adding public humiliation to the mix of my already overwhelming frustration and anger. It was a spectacle, one I'm sure will fuel neighborhood gossip for weeks. Finally, my dad, perhaps seeing how out of control things had gotten, physically pulled Steph away and told the movers to stop. They left shortly after, taking only their personal effects. But the damage was done. The air was thick with unsaid things and the house felt colder, emptier. I watched the truck drive away, a part of me relieved they were gone and another part dreading the quiet that their absence left behind. Now, I'm sitting in my living room, surrounded by the echoes of the day's chaos. It's hard to feel at peace when every room reminds me of the confrontation. Dad hasn't called or texted since they left, and I'm left to wonder if our relationship will ever recover from this. The twins' parting words keep replaying in my mind, reminders of the divide that has grown between us. I've been pondering my next steps. Clearly, legal protection might be necessary if Steph decides to follow through on her threats. I've been looking up lawyers just in case I need to defend my property rights or deal with any other surprises Steph might throw my way. The idea of getting legal counsel feels like admitting things are worse than I want to accept, but I know it's necessary. Emotionally, I'm drained. It feels like I'm mourning the loss of my family all over again. How do you grieve for people who are still alive, who have chosen to turn their backs on you over material things? The house feels too big, too quiet, and I find myself wandering rooms I used to avoid, looking for something that feels like normalcy. I've also started thinking about security. Maybe it's time to install some cameras or an alarm system. The thought that they might come back, that they might not be done with their claims on what's mine, keeps me up at night. It's another expense, another thing to worry about, but my sense of safety has been shaken. And then there's the rebuilding. How do you rebuild trust, a sense of home, when it's been so thoroughly violated? I find myself missing my mom more than ever. She always knew what to do, how to handle the stormy waters of life with grace and strength. I'm trying to hold on to the lessons she taught me, but right now, everything just feels overwhelming. So, that's where I'm at. A house that feels less like a home, a family scattered and broken, and a future filled with uncertainty. I welcome any advice, any words of wisdom you might have on how to navigate this. How do you move on from betrayal? How do you rebuild when everything feels broken? Thanks for listening, for being there. Even if it's just through messages and comments. This community has been a lifeline, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate every single one of you. Here's hoping the next update brings better news. Until then, take care. Update 5. Hey everyone. Since the last update with that moving truck and the argument over my family heirlooms, I thought maybe, just maybe, we had reached the peak of this whole mess. I was sorely mistaken. Just when I thought things might start to simmer down, they boiled over instead. Early this week, amid my attempts to reclaim some semblance of normalcy, I was thrown yet another curve. Sorry, let's just call it a complication. I received a very formal, very intimidating letter that seemed straight out of a legal drama. Steph, with my dad seemingly in her corner, has decided to take legal action against me. The claim? That they are entitled to a portion of my estate due to their emotional distress and their alleged contributions to the upkeep of my home during their brief stay. It's ludicrous. The only thing they contributed to was my skyrocketing stress levels and a nearly endless headache. I immediately called my dad to confront him about the letter. The conversation was stilted, with a lot of silence on his end. He seemed to downplay the whole situation, suggesting that it was just Steph being dramatic and that things would settle down once everyone calmed down. It felt like he was brushing off the gravity of the situation, or maybe he's just too wrapped up in his new relationship to see things clearly. But it didn't end there. The twins, who've been noticeably silent up till now, decided to jump into the fray. I started receiving a barrage of texts from them, each one more accusatory than the last. They blamed me for their mother's stress and claimed I was tearing their family apart. The audacity was breathtaking. They even had the nerve to ask if they could swing by to pick up some forgotten personal items, which, oddly enough, included several of my mother's most prized and valuable antiques. Clearly, they've picked up Steph's tactic of twisting the truth. The next day brought yet another surprise. I heard a knock at the door and found Steph and my dad on my doorstep, uninvited and unexpected. They wanted to talk. This talk, however, was mostly Steph speaking, while my dad just stood there, nodding along. Steph was laying it on thick, trying to guilt-trip me into capitulating to their demands. She painted a picture of how hard this was for all of them, and hinted that I was being unreasonable by not sharing the wealth of the estate. My dad barely said a word, just echoed Steph's sentiments whenever he did speak. I held my ground. I told them they had no right to show up at my door and make demands, especially after the legal threat. Steph's response was a mix of anger and more threats about what their lawyer would do. The confrontation escalated until I finally warned them that I would call the police if they didn't leave. Watching them go, I felt a mix of relief and a deep, unsettling dread. This was my father, and yet I felt like I was looking at a stranger. Now I find myself in a position where I need to seek legal counsel, a step I never imagined taking against my own family. But Steph's aggression and the potential legal ramifications of her claims are things I can't just ignore. It's draining, this constant state of defense, and it's turning my home into a battleground rather than a sanctuary. Amid all this chaos, I've been trying to find moments of peace. I spend evenings trying to lose myself in books which offer a temporary escape from the stress. Calls with friends act as a lifeline, a reminder that there is life outside this storm. Yet the reality is that every knock on the door sends a jolt of anxiety through me. Every call from an unknown number leaves me bracing for more bad news. I've been reflecting a lot on how things got to this point. It's clear that whatever relationship I had with my dad is fundamentally altered, perhaps irrevocably. The man who raised me, who was once my hero, now seems to have prioritized his relationship with Steph over his own daughter. It's a bitter pill to swallow, and I'm left navigating feelings of betrayal alongside the legal complexities of their demands. This situation has also forced me to reckon with the notion of family and inheritance. The home I loved, filled with memories of my mother and generations past, has become a contested space, a piece of property over which a legal battle is being waged. It's a stark reminder that sometimes family conflicts can transcend personal disagreements and venture into the realm of legal disputes. So here I am, asking for your advice and insights once more. Has anyone else dealt with family legal battles, especially involving estates and inheritance? How did you cope, and what helped you through it? Any and all advice is welcome. Update 6. So, after my last update where Steph and my dad were pushing hard with their legal threats, claiming they deserved a part of my mom's estate, things took a dramatic turn in the courtroom. The judge, thankfully, saw right through the absurdity of their claims and dismissed the case outright. It was a huge relief to have the legal system validate what I'd been feeling all along, that their claims were completely unfounded and just plain ridiculous. You'd think that would be the end of it, right? Well, not exactly. Life had more surprises in store. Fast forward 2 months, things had started to quiet down, and I was beginning to think maybe I could finally move on and start healing from all the family drama. That's when I got the shock of my life. Out of nowhere, my dad shows up at my doorstep. But he wasn't just visiting, he had all his stuff with him. Bags, suitcases, you name it. I was totally taken aback. Standing there looking at him with all his belongings, I couldn't help but feel a mix of confusion and concern. I asked him straight up, "What happened?" He looked defeated, more so than I've ever seen him before. He told me that he and Steph were getting a divorce. It turns out, Steph had been cheating on him. He caught her red-handed, and when he confronted her, she kicked him out of their house. The irony wasn't lost on me, given all that had transpired, but seeing him this broken was still a shock. My dad standing there seemed like a shadow of the man he used to be. He was apologetic, almost meek. He said he had nowhere else to go and asked if he could stay with me temporarily. I won't lie, part of me wanted to shut the door in his face for all the pain he'd caused. But another part, maybe the part that still remembered him as my dad before all this mess, felt sympathy for him. I let him in. We had a long, hard talk that first night. He opened up about everything, how things went downhill with Steph after their honeymoon phase, how he felt trapped in a marriage that was based more on convenience and Steph's manipulation than actual love. He was full of regrets, especially about how he had handled things with me and the estate. Hearing all this was a lot to process. On one hand, I felt validated that Steph's true colors were finally clear to him too. On the other hand, I was angry and hurt that it took this for him to see what I'd been dealing with all along. The house feels different with him here. There's an awkwardness, a tension that lingers in the air. We're both trying to navigate this new dynamic, figuring out how to move forward. I've set some ground rules about his stay, emphasizing that this is temporary. I'm also insisting that we go to family therapy. If we're going to have any sort of relationship moving forward, we need professional help to unpack all the hurt and betrayal. It's weird, you know? Part of me is cautious, waiting for the other shoe to drop, wondering if this is just another one of life's cruel jokes. But another part of me hopes that maybe this is a second chance for us to fix things, to rebuild something out of the wreckage of our past. Meanwhile, the practical side of me is busy too. I've been talking to lawyers to make sure that all legal aspects of the dismissed case are wrapped up and that there are no loose ends that could come back to haunt us. I'm also looking into how to protect myself and the estate should any more surprises pop up. So that's where I am now, trying to find a balance between caution and hope, between guarding my heart and opening it just enough to let in some healing. It's not easy, and I'm taking it one day at a time. Thanks for sticking with me through all this craziness. Your support and advice have been invaluable. If anyone has gone through something similar or has insights on dealing with family reconciliations after such deep conflicts, I'm all ears. How do you rebuild trust when it's been shattered so thoroughly? How do you protect yourself while still being open to forgiveness? Until next time, sending you all good vibes and hoping for more peaceful days ahead.